implore the men in the world who have women that they say they care about, daughters that they are raising, that this is their issue too. I mean, for men to sit on their hands over this issue and trade out women's health for a tax break or whatever it is a sad statement about that man's level of value of the women in their life.
We're talking about how expensive it was to live in the White House. Go for it.
It's expensive to live in the White House.
Yeah.
As many people don't know. Sure. I mean, much is not covered. You're paying for every bit of food that you eat. You're not paying for housing and the staff in it, but everything, even travel. If you're not traveling with the president, if your kids are coming on a Bright Star, which is the First Lady's plane, we had to pay for their travel to be on the plane.
Michelle Obama entered with her signature aura of untouchable fame. But live on TV, Charlie Kirk and Patrick Bet-David brought a storm of sharp wit and hard truths. They didn't debate, they dismantled, exposing contradictions behind her polished image. The moment was intense, raw, and impossible to ignore. With every pointed word, they challenged the narrative, shaking even her loyal supporters. By the end, it wasn't admiration that filled the room, it was stunned silence and second thoughts.
Oh yes, no, she's at her complaining quotient, but I guess she's talking about abortion there as if like, women's health. But let me just be clear. Not a single Trump voting male in the world is ever going to be won over by complaining Michelle Obama. Just to make she looks.
Why would you ever post this picture? Yes. No. The people were, and I'm actually not being funny. They were asking Barack, why would you ever post this picture? What part of Michelle's picture? Barack looks great. That is not a.
Could you close up on her, Rob?
Actually, don't. But can you zoom out a little bit? Not for bad reasons. It's just she doesn't look good in that picture. Yeah. Sometimes you don't look good. So guess what you do when sometimes you don't look good? You ask and you say, hey, babe, you okay if I post this picture? No, use this one.
Charlie Kirk opened with the precision of someone who'd been waiting for this moment since hearing the word becoming. Cool and composed, he didn't flinch. Instead, he went straight for the ideological jugular with calm, cutting commentary. No yelling, no theatrics, just facts laid out like traps. And then he let the narrative collapse under the weight of its own self-importance. It was brutal, silent, and effective.
Push through it. And one side note on Michelle Obama, can we just note how overrated she is? And like all the hype around Michelle Obama, she's going to run for office. And she's just... I don't want to get into the aesthetics of all of it, but the presentation of her podcast is terrible.
I've never been in the Michelle Obama's running for president campaign.
Let me ask you a question.
I don't get it.
Let me ask you a question. How much of becoming a president on the Democratic side, hear me out, how much of being a president on the Democratic side do you think is you getting picked or you saying, I'm going to be a president? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, how much of it do you think is the first one?
If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Charlie Kirk didn't hold back, calling Michelle Obama less a former first lady and more a full-time influencer with a part-time sense of accountability. Between Netflix deals and book tours, he argued, she seemed to forget that Americans remember reality, not just polished camera angles and carefully filtered speeches about empowerment.
So recently, I have mourned the dimming of that hope, and maybe you've experienced the same feelings, that deep pit in my stomach, a palpable sense of dread about the future.
It's so dark. And now she's saying, now I have hope because of Kamala Harris. The apocalyptic undertones of the Democrat Party is dramatic. This is their identity. This is their purpose.
Charlie's trademark isn't punching up or down, it's striking wherever the nonsense hides. And Michelle Obama's brand, he argued, is a mansion built on narrative gymnastics. He kicked things off by highlighting how the woman who claimed to be apolitical somehow had her fingerprints on nearly every cultural grenade thrown since 2009. It wasn't subtle, it was strategic.
If all of a sudden the Dems did flip in August and they put a Newsom, Michelle combination, do you know what mainstream media would do with that? CNN, what Jimmy Fallon, Colbert, all these podcasts, the Oprah Winfrey, the NBA, LeBron.
Forget it.
Do you know what Taylor Swift, do you know what these guys would be doing? It would be bonkers. By the way, if it is Michelle and Newsom, it's going to be a dog.
Michelle Obama's lack of subtlety is almost an art form. She could write a children's book about vegetables and still manage to slip in a comment on voter suppression. Charlie Kirk made it clear this wasn't about disagreeing with her policies. It was about calling out the calculated performance art disguised as genuine concern. And then came the real fun. Charlie dismantled her carefully curated persona like a mismatched IKEA bookshelf. The public image of Michelle is all about relatability. The former first lady who dances, wears sneakers, and pops up on cooking shows. But Charlie pointed out a glaring contradiction in trying to play both Oprah and a revolutionary. If Michelle truly represented the oppressed, he argued, she wouldn't be sipping imported tea on a $60,000 couch while telling working-class Americans they don't dream big enough. That's a disconnection so wide, it practically has its own zip code. True to form, Charlie didn't stop at the surface. He dove deep into the psychology of it all, dissecting how Michelle's rise to pop culture sainthood wasn't about courage or intellect. It was a masterpiece of modern marketing, designed to sell a narrative, not a genuine message.
Reasons, it's just she doesn't look good in that picture. Yeah. Sometimes you don't look good. So guess what you do when sometimes you don't look good? You ask and you say, hey, babe, you okay if I post this picture? No, use this one, use that one, use this one. So I don't even know why he posted the picture. You know, he has his own reasons for posting a picture. So a lot of people said, why are you even doing this? It's not cool for you to post a picture like this. So
the media treated Michelle Obama the way teenagers idolize boy bands, wildly, irrationally, and without a shred of objectivity. She was placed on a pedestal so high that questioning her was practically forbidden. Critique her. You're sexist. Fact checker. Now you're racist. Any dissent was branded as some form of ideological sin. But Charlie Kirk didn't play by those rules. He didn't just roast Michelle, he served up her brand with a side of elite hypocrisy. He called her memoir less a window into her soul and more a product of consultants and focus groups, carefully designed to trigger emotion without inviting scrutiny. According to Kirk, Michelle wasn't relatable, she was rehearsed. There's a vast difference between being a role model and playing a role, and she, he argued, was clearly the latter. Every emotional interview, every struggle-laced soundbite, every veiled jab at America's character, Kirk claimed it was all part of a well-engineered script. And just when the audience thought he was done, he brought up her infamous remark about not being proud of her country until a political shift. Kirk unpacked that line like a bomb technician, wire by wire.
All the time, and she's complaining. Right, again, I'm not trying to look in people's looks. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying the whole aura of it, to use a Gen Z term, is terrible. It's negative. It's just kind of her lamenting. And then she's obviously, there's problems with her daughters and all that. I don't want to get into that. But we built up on the right. Michelle Obama is going to be the hardest person ever to run against. And her book sold so many copies. And
Charlie Kirk posed a sharp question. What kind of person rises to the highest levels of power, enjoys every freedom this country offers, and still feels morally justified in shaming the very system that enabled their success? He argued that Michelle Obama's version of America is a hologram of fictional dystopia that somehow never interferes with her private jet schedule. Then came Patrick Bet-David, and the entire energy shifted. Patrick isn't a political sniper, he's a cultural wrecking ball. Where Charlie was precise and surgical, Patrick was loud, cinematic, and unflinching. He tore through the glossy packaging of Michelle's public persona like a contractor discovering termites in a Beverly Hills mansion. With a smirk and a shrug, he set the tone almost like saying, you already know what's coming, but let's say it out loud anyway. Patrick's weapon of choice is the strategic pause. He reels you in with casual delivery, lulls you into comfort, then lands a punchline so brutal it reverberates across the political arena. He began by questioning why the media treats Michelle as untouchable, then one by one, touched every sacred cow in her rhetorical pasture. He pointed out that Michelle doesn't speak like someone trying to uplift Americans. Instead, her tone often resembles a guilt trip one wrapped in elite packaging, designed to shame rather than inspire. Patrick didn't just challenge her message, he dismantled the emotional architecture behind it, brick by scripted brick.
I mean, look, first of all, just like the embedded kind of just implied chauvinism that all of our relationships in the Trump world are like, we tell our wives exactly what to do. It's like, okay, no, we all have agency, okay? Secondly, I just have to comment on this. She's really lost a step. Just embedded in her language is like, she's really let...
Patrick Bet-David mocked the idea of Michelle Obama as the nation's moral compass. He argued that if your version of morality involves scolding millions while cashing checks from the very corporations you claim to oppose, you might not be the beacon of virtue you think you are. He questioned how someone could spend 8 years in the White House, surrounded by power and privilege, and still claim the mantle of victimhood. Patrick even mimicked her dramatic pauses, furrowed brows, and carefully staged concernal punchlines needed. The absurdity spoke for itself. He said listening to Michelle talk about struggle was like hearing a billionaire complain about ATM fees, tone deaf, unrelatable, and borderline comical. Yet the media applauds her every word because questioning Michelle is treated like questioning gravity. You just don't do it in polite society. And that, Patrick argued, is the problem. She's been wrapped in narrative armor for too long.
And more energy and more intensity. It's like this Michelle Obama just looks broken. She's kind of doing the wine mom thing, and she's just kind of like, I'm just kind of meandering through life. Anyway, I'm not upset about
populated
it.
Populated like every 30 seconds with, what about me? No one asks about
totally,
me.
Exactly. Or and Megan, I know you'll take this in good stride, but she's like, we black women need to complain more. Yeah, that's the problem.
Patrick then focused on the establishment's strange obsession with elevating Michelle Obama into political royalty. He argued that it's not really about her accomplishments, but about forcing a narrative that fits a pre-written script. According to him, Michelle isn't truly admired, she's projected. People don't see the real woman. They see what they want her to represent. That makes her the ideal mascot for a movement built on illusion, like a TED Talk on empathy go by a PR firm. There's no real depth, just polished buzzwords designed to trigger applause. And sadly, millions treat it like gospel. But Patrick pushed the audience to look beyond the curated image. He asked them to question what Michelle had actually risked. His answer, not her wealth, not her status, not even her comfort. According to Patrick, the only thing she ever gambled was the public's trust, wrapping it in carefully branded messages, while never truly stepping out of her safe zone.
Michelle Obama says, until recently, I've mourned the dimming of that hope. And maybe you've experienced the same feelings. Is that a pit in my stomach? A palpable sense of dread about the future? Now, look, Michelle Obama has well-documented anxiety problems. And it's very interesting. When they are not in control of political power, they get anxiety. And being at the DNC, this for them is church. For them, this was a religion.
Patrick even joked that Michelle Obama's activism has all the danger of a scented candle, calming, safe, and completely not threatening. She encourages people to rise up, but only if it doesn't clash with brunch plans. Her revolution comes gift-wrapped with a signed book and a podcast subscription. It's activism for the comfortable change, sponsored by corporations and powered by emotional manipulation. According to Patrick, Michelle doesn't wield power in the traditional sense. She's mastered the emotional high ground. She doesn't debate, she declares. She doesn't argue, she emotes. And if you disagree, you're not incorrect. You're heartless. It's clever. He admitted to an emotional sleight of hand that disguises control as compassion. But once you spot the trick, it's impossible to unsee. It's not real leadership, he claimed. It's theater, a Broadway production, dressed in the costume of political doctrine. Sold as inspiration, but staged for influence.
You really have to wonder, in fact, you know, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken.
Patrick closed with a rhetorical Molotov cocktail, calling out the deepest irony of Michelle Obama's narrative. The self-proclaimed outsider, he argued, has never actually lived like one. She is the establishment, the system personified. And when one of the most powerful, celebrated, and wealthy women in America still claims victimhood, you have to ask, what does winning even look like? That was the message both Charlie Kirk and Patrick Bet-David drove home, each in their distinct style. Michelle Obama's carefully crafted narrative only works if everyone agrees to suspend disbelief. It thrives in an atmosphere where real questions are off limits and applause replaces accountability. But Kirk and Patrick weren't playing along. They pulled back the velvet curtain and revealed the machinery, an emotional illusion powered by performance, not principle, and designed to shield itself from the scrutiny real leadership demands.
So, what are you thinking when you're giving this message? Like, what are you thinking in your mind? Because let's do data. Rob, can you type in Obama's net worth in 2007? What was Obama in 2007? 1.2 million, 1.3 million. Okay. So their net worth is, let's write this down. This is pre-White House. Their collective net worth was 1.3 million. Can you go to where their net worth was in 2016 when they're done being presidents? Okay. 2016. So their net worth, as expensive as it was, they went from being 1.3 million to 12.2 million.
Charlie Kirk focused on the ideological contradictions. Patrick Bet-David went after the cultural mythology. Together, they dissected the public persona of Michelle Obama, not out of malice, but because someone had to speak the obvious out loud. Not everyone who smiles for the camera and sprinkles in buzzwords is a hero. Sometimes, they're just skilled brand architects. And when the applause dies down and the cameras shut off, what's left is the uncomfortable possibility that we've all bought into a story more polished than it is real. This wasn't just a roast, it was a reckoning, a starting point. The red carpet is still laid out, the spotlight still shines, and Michelle Obama remains center stage. But now, the audience is a little less entranced, a little more skeptical. Because once the illusion cracks, the entire script starts to unravel. Just when you thought the curtain had closed, Patrick leaned back and tossed in one final grenade. He asked why Michelle, if so devoted to helping the downtrodden, always appears behind velvet ropes in the wealthiest zip codes, delivering neatly packaged wisdom to elite audiences, nodding in unison. He joked that her outreach looked a lot like brand expansion. But meanwhile, Charlie circled back to a chilling reminder. The most dangerous form of deception isn't an outright lights a half-truth wrapped in applause. And that deception doesn't just fuel Michelle's myth, but the entire machinery that elevates her. The roast, in the end, wasn't just about Michelle Obama, it was about unmasking the system that turns curated personas into untouchable icons.